Hi there, Chris from TotallyEV, and here we're doing a dedicated audio review of the Suzuki Across plug-in hybrid. If you'd like a detailed review of the vehicle itself, do check it up on your pop banner, down in the description below, or indeed in the pinned comments. Now to kick off this video, we're going to talk about its audio configuration. And as standard, and the only system that is currently available, is a 6-speaker setup that outputs 120 watts. Here you've got drivers found within each of the doors, and they output 20 watts each, and I've got 16 centimeters in terms of diameter. And then you've also got 2 tweeters that are found towards the front cowl. That's the area between yourself and the dashboard. Now, this is a shame that you don't have the ability to actually upgrade the audio system, and we'll touch upon why further down in this video. But before doing so, we should talk about how you connect up to the infotainment system. And here, if you're using a wireless connection, in other words Bluetooth, you're going to be limited to the SPC and AAC codecs only. For you to achieve higher quality playback, you'll want to plug it in, whereby here Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are supported, which is just great to see. Now, for you to tinker around with the audio drivers, you have got a 3-band equalizer that can be found on the 9-inch infotainment system. And here we've left treble in terms of its default configuration, taken 1 notch of mid and 1 notch off bass. As for the fader and balance, we should point out that we've actually taken 1 notch off the front and taken it 1 step back, in other words gone to the rear. And we'll touch upon why in terms of the overall soundstage. Now before doing that, we should talk about the overall cabin noise. And what we'll say subjectively is that you do hear the ECVT transmission thrashing away a little bit at the front, but it's not that noticeable, specifically not in comparison to the likes of the Honda HR-V, which uses a similar system. You can hear a little bit of tire noise as well and wind deflecting off the A-pillars, but it's quite minimal. Now, using our sound meter, we noted at a standstill 35 decibels, and then while driving at 20 to 30 miles an hour, this went up to 53 to 57 dBA, going up to around 40 miles an hour, this went up to 60 to 64 dBA, and driving at 70 miles an hour, this was around 69 to 73 dBA. Note all of our tests, you can't actually hear the ECVT transmission via the sound meter, so it's just something we thought to point out and something to be mindful about. What we'll say, really subjectively, is the fact that the in-cabin experience is actually pretty quiet. Now, with all of that in mind, we're going to get onto a sound demo, and we're placing the camera and microphone in 4 separate locations within the cabin and playing back a track. The song in question is from Prayer J and it's titled Falling. If you're interested in hearing it for yourself or indeed purchasing it, do check out the links down in the description below.
Then learn how to fly. It's the only way I know how to play this game to success. I'm not quite sussed it yet. When I reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always think, and now the thing is my imagination is constantly racing 1,000 miles ahead. I'm living in my own mind, but it's floating, I'm always hoping. When I reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always sink, and now
Now, I appreciate an audio demo over YouTube is never ideal, but it'll give you a little bit of a taster as to how the audio system performs. Now, what we'll get onto is my subjective opinion. And first off, let's talk about the sub-bass extension. And here it's pretty much non-existent because there is no subwoofer in order to aid those lower end frequencies. It's quite a shame that Suzuki haven't included a subwoofer because it really would have bolstered the overall sub-bass extension and the overall bass presence. Now, as for the mid-bass, it's actually pretty punchy and hearty. You might actually want to take 1 notch off the bass EQ through the infotainment system. What we found here is that it actually does have good amount of control and precision, and also gives you the right amount of oomph, at least depending in terms of the music you're listening to. And in our case, when it comes to EDM, R&B or dance music, it does result in a joyous experience. Now, as for the mid-range, you might have noticed that I did take 1 notch off the mid EQ, and that's because I felt in terms of its default configuration, it did sound a little bit artificial when going into critical listening and listening to male and female vocals. Just felt it was a little bit off, and therefore taking 1 notch brought the accuracy, but all while also reducing the overall presence of the mid-range response. And frankly, no matter if it's default configuration or in terms of 1 notch off, what you'll find is the mids are quite recessed and pushed back. And yes, you could EQ it to the nth degree in terms of the mid-range, but then you will get a very much artificial sound, and therefore vocals won't be anywhere near accurate. So suffice to say, you're just going to get a V-shaped sound signature. As for the high highs, they extend pretty well at the front of the cabin, whereby you've got those dedicated tweeters, although it's worth bearing in mind that at the rear of the cabin, the experience is somewhat dampened, and that is of course because you don't have any tweeters to aid with those higher end frequencies. Now, aside from its capabilities across the sound frequency range, we should also talk about the Soundstage, and here we're actually left quite disappointed. See, the music feels just a little bit too unidirectional, and therefore the music just feels like it's coming from the front of the cabin only, actually more specifically towards the A-pillars, and even though that's where just the tweeters are positioned. Here we feel that the positioning of the drivers could have been a little bit better optimized, and or Suzuki could have provided more drivers within the cabin to really heighten the experience, specifically for the rear occupants. As a result, if you want to give a little bit better experience for your rear occupants and or have a bit more of a airy sound, you might want to take one notch off the front and take it one notch back, and therefore means that you'll just get a little bit better width and depth. Nevertheless, here the overall instrument separation and the overall soundstage is somewhat disappointing. Now this brings us on to our verdict, and quite frankly we're a little bit disheartened with what Suzuki have offered here when it comes to the audio system. It will suffice for those people who don't care too much about music, but if you've come to this review, you're probably caring about the overall audio experience, and as such here some of its competitors offer a far more compelling option. For example, the likes of the Honda HR-V or even the Citroen C5 Aircross Hybrid, which is no real exceptional audio system, but it's definitely great for the price that it comes in at. And given the price of the Suzuki Across, which comes in at £46,500, one might have expected far superior audio quality. Alas, that's not the case. Now, we'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts of the vehicle down in the comment section below, and if you've liked this independent detailed review and want to see more from myself and the channel, definitely do drop a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which are greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.